Since you, my friend, are watching this, chances are you already know that bullet journaling is more than just planning or making pretty layouts. It is a tool for intentional living. Welcome back to Focus and Flow, a place for planning and bullet journal inspiration. I am Catherine, and I've been bullet journaling since 2015. Let me show you some of the things I've learned. The wisdom we gain from reflection is a crucial part of the human journey, and we don't need to spill a ton of ink to do it. In this video, I'll share with you my process for metabolizing the data I've captured during the previous month in a creative and fun review format. Okay, story time. In my marriage, we are perfect opposites when it comes to technology. I prefer longhand, analog, paper, and pen, whereas my husband likes to keep things electronically in notes, apps, Excel sheets, etc. As much as he supports my interests, he will come to me now and again and ask, "When do you come back and look at this? How do you reference all of this information?" Well, I have an answer. The monthly review is a new spread that I'm using to sum up and capture the happenings and memories of the month. The benefit is twofold: to reflect on the time that has just passed and to note any items that may be of use for reference in the future. Like all bullet journal spreads, what you keep in your monthly review is entirely up to you. You can keep it more objective with a focus on metrics and important dates, or you can use it like a retrospective to note the inner landscape of your month. Me personally, I like to have a little bit of both. I'll start out by sketching the different subsections in pencil and referencing my prior monthly review so I can kind of get a picture of the types of layout that I might want to have. I am going to tweak things a little bit from the prior spread, but overall I do want to keep it pretty similar. By no means have I invented including a month in review in my journal. Many creators, including Ryder Carroll himself, have shared their methods, and this is mine. While I have known about this for some time, I've only started including it because I felt that so many notable things do tend to go by that don't end up getting properly acknowledged. For example, I might check off that a goal was completed in my quarterly collection, but when was that goal actually met? Were there any important circumstances or people surrounding it? And while I might remember a favorite book, maybe it's helpful for me to see that I read it in the spring because in the summer I had some kind of breakthrough, and those things are actually related. The actual categories I'm including in this spread are inspired by one that I have used for several years and that I keep at the end of every journal, which is my year in review. Honestly, it's one of my favorite spreads to make, so I thought I'd try my hand at a smaller slice of time and keep track in a monthly review. As per usual, I'm going piecemeal about setting this up just because that's how I work. It hopefully isn't very frustrating to watch, but honestly, it's just my process. I tend to create certain anchor points in a spread and then I just kind of build out from there, and that for me is how it comes together organically. What I'm starting with is my memories section where I keep space for some long form writing, followed by happenings, which is like headlines, and weather, just because that helps me to remember and get a feel for the month. I do like to keep what I accomplished and what I struggled with pretty front and center, just because I consider those to be fairly key aspects that I want to be aware of when I go back and look at the month. These are things that I try to be fairly neutral about, but I want to make note of. The most fun section of this spread is always going to be the favorites list. So I like to include things like media that I really enjoyed consuming, such as music or books or movies. I also like to include some of my favorite activities, or if there's anything in particular that I was working on that I want to make note of that I really enjoyed. I use some stencils just to create some images. It just kind of mixes everything up visually, and then I just create a little bit of space to jot down a couple of the tip-top favorites for the month. The last two sections I have here are arguably the most important ones. I feel that they sort of bookend really nicely with the first two things that I have on the spread. So these final bits are for metrics, which is where I keep all of my numbers, things that I want to record, take note of, and also lessons that I learned during the month. This is a great place to consolidate notes or otherwise reference things that I feel are quite important that I want to make sure that I'm taking with me into the future. Since I include photos along with my monthly spreads, I really wanted to incorporate some kind of aspect of that in this spread, so I am keeping these little circle stencils here as placeholders for small circular images that I'll print out on my handy little mini printer later on. And now let's carry over to the end of the month to see how this spread turns out. The best way that I've found for doing a retrospective is to gather any notebooks that I've been using as well as my phone and spend a few minutes taking it all in. Here I've gathered my long form journal. This is actually my Artist's Way journal, but who's counting? I am an Artist's Way dropout. My daily journal and my reading journal. I also like to take a look over my monthly page and make a quick note as to the habits I've tracked or the level 10 life categories that I wanted to work on. I want to look at my goals and to-do areas just to refresh myself for what was going on and how I walked into the month, and now I can take a look at how I walked out of it, right? Sometimes, like this month, items noted on the calendar may have ended up being crossed out, and I also want to pay attention to that because there might be a story there, there might be something worth noting. And now let's get to the other notebooks. I won't be reviewing my long form on camera just because it is personal to me, and I did have only one entry for the month, but it was helpful to give me an idea of the kinds of things I was thinking and doing at that time. Part of the purpose of reviewing these other journals is to get a slice of life of what was going on at the time, and this is a very helpful method of doing that. Next up, my daily journal. This is a little guy that I've been keeping at my bedside, and I like to fill it out before bed. I've been using it for a couple of months now, pretty sporadically. But what it does is it allows me to reflect on the day and record any little moments of things that I loved or hated maybe that came up during that day. I did select a page that I felt wasn't too personal, and that was a good example of this method. So as I continue to integrate it, I may share a video on this process as well, but to be honest, it's pretty new to me. What I can see here is that I was watching a particular TV show, I was listening to certain artists, and I was noting how I spent my time. And my reading journal, this I will probably end up doing a video on. This is a new thing for me in 2025 and I have been loving it. I keep it simple because honestly I only need one heavily planned out journal, but I like that it gives me the flexibility to write as much or as little about what I'm reading as I want to. And even though when I get to the end of the month, I probably have a pretty fresh concept of the books that I've been reading, I do like to look back and just quickly review my thoughts. This month I have read a number of books, and some of them were very highly rated, some of them were very low rated by myself. And I might take note of certain genres or certain overarching themes that were going on. So I just like to bring that in the mix too. If you recall, when I was making the spread, I had these little stickers down here, sticker spots at the bottom. So I have on hand the stickers that I have printed out from my Canon Ivy, which I will be placing in the stenciled areas. I took a look through my photos and I picked out a couple that seemed memorable for the time and places that I was at during the month, and this lets me kind of pull in the stories of my memories. Okay, now let's get started. Accomplishments and challenges, of course, they're subjective and they can be whatever you want. They don't always have to be something like summiting mountains or crossing off big goals, but you know, those don't happen every month, right? So I like to note down my wins. And this month I was back to full primary in my yoga practice. I completed some important but nagging tasks, and I started leading as a volunteer with the cat care organization that I've been working with recently. I also got a new library card. These are all things that just generally seem like positives. So it's helpful to look back over your month and kind of pull that into a nice little summary for yourself that makes you feel good, allows you to recall what you have done to improve your life or yourself during the month. Not as fun, but arguably just as important are the challenges, and that basically means things that weren't so great or were factors that played into my overall well-being during the month. And for me, I included that there was no book club meeting. Honestly, I was really looking forward to this, but something happened that just gave me the ick, and I didn't go. I didn't do any language study and just the general state of things here in the US. I also like to give a space or two to come back to as I continue to fill out the other sections. Of course, the way the brain works is through association. So as I'm floating through these different parts of the spread, something might come into my consciousness that, oh yeah, I forgot that there was that one thing. So I want to leave space there that I can come back to and jot something else down. So while I'm feeling listy, I like to move down to the happening section, which is just a place to take note of general news or stuff that was kind of in the ether. For example, this was my first month with an alternate work schedule, so I was still adjusting to the hours, and a couple of trips came up on the horizon. So I just like to make note of things that maybe felt a little bit less internal or less accomplishment related that were still going on in my life during the month. Of course, weather is weather. I don't know that I will continue to keep this in the long run as part of my spread for a monthly review, but for now it's a place for me to just get a feel of what it was like to be on planet Earth that month. So this month I am doing a little bit of complaining and a little bit of celebrating because the weather was not enjoyable much of the time, although I did get some sun for my birthday weekend, so that was good. As I mentioned earlier, the favorite section is certainly my favorite part to fill out. This is where I give space for some of the media and activities that were in my sphere for the month that I just loved. So getting started with music, I look back at my app of choice and note down some of the songs that were on repeat and just kind of what I was listening to, which is so easy to access in these apps, right? And for movie and TV, I wanted to remember some of the shows I enjoyed, which was most importantly The Residence on Netflix. I highly recommend it. And I'm also giving props to some of the books that I most enjoyed, which were The Hike and Bright Young Women, and they were great reads this month. The Hike in particular by Drew Magary was a 5-star read for me and was just wildly excellent. And since I love being active and I sometimes do different things, I wanted to make note of that here, just what was going on physically in my body and what I was physically up to. And particularly, I started using a new app for stretch breaks, which is called Bend, not sponsored. And I started using some new machines at the gym. I also note down some things that I made and a couple of items that came into my life during the month, including a very sweet gift from my friend Anne and a great new sweater, which I just love. So now it's time to come in and log some memories, and for this I have reviewed my photos and overall what was written in my journals and other pages. The most joyful part of this process is finding things that you had already forgotten about, to be honest. So for instance, I completely forgot that I had gone to a classical piano concert, even though it was stunning. And a concert that Sid performed in, for some reason I thought it was longer ago than it was, and it actually took place this month. So taking note of these things and putting them succinctly all in one page gives a nice feel at the end of the month and really lets me see everything that I've done, because the mind can be fickle. My last section includes metrics, as numbers tend to be pretty important, and what you might choose to focus on here could be related to any variety of things, but I typically like to focus on things related to money, numbers of bookings that I've had for my business, progress on other number-specific goals, or how many times I did a certain activity. So I do like to look back. If you have done this previously, I like to look back and see what I had tracked here the last month, because that can be very helpful to just kind of have a steady, consistent follow-up to see, what was going on and is there a baseline. And finally, don't sleep on the what I learned section, because that's where the alchemy really happens. This is where I reflect on the events, the feelings, the places, the things that I have recorded here, and I put their overall impact into words. If there is one section that I'm going to be referencing in the future from this particular spread, it is probably going to be this area. This might be profound or maybe something funny or practical. It really depends, but I usually will put some notes to self here, which are going to be helping me in the long run. Last but not least, it's time for the photos. I just like to keep this area for fun and to add a little bit more of a visceral bit of memory. My photos this month are of Toby, a cat at the place I've been volunteering, and he got into particular shenanigans on this day, let me tell you. I also have a free bundt cake that I got for my birthday. I highly recommend that you look up birthday freebies, by the way, because it's nice. And I also took a photo here of a gorgeous landmark in Encinitas, where I ended up going to the Self-Realization Fellowship Meditation Garden. It was very nice. We've made it. The monthly review for April is now basically complete. For the time that I've included this in my journal, I found that I really enjoy going back and looking at the things that I've included in these spreads. Just like a regular monthly spread sets the map for this period of time, the review feels like something of a proper conclusion. Let me know, do you have anything like this in your journal? And if not, would you consider it? If you've watched to the end, thank you so much. Could you leave me a cat emoji in the comments to tell me that you got here? I just love cats. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and we will meet again. Happy journaling.